SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop 10 is ready for the majority of users in most companies. We actually did a study and we found that there's this whole category of users called the basic office worker. And a basic office worker is a computer user who needs basic office applications like a word processor, spreadsheet, presentation program. They, of course, need email and a calendar, their web browser, and maybe an instant messenger, and basic desktop functionality. And that's about it. Maybe they're using some internal company apps, but their core desktop needs are met by 7 or 8 different applications. And so we said, why can't we build a desktop for those users? And between the basic office workers and people who need even less functionality, like people doing data entry or factory floor work in companies, SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop 10 is ready to address the needs of 70 or 80% of the users in any company. Well, users of most desktops today face all kinds of problems. The desktops are expensive, they're difficult to manage, and they're just riddled with security problems. Viruses, worms, Trojans that infect their networks and take down their machines and end their user productivity for days at a time sometimes. So people are looking for an alternative. They're looking for a desktop that's safe, that's secure, that's not the subject of attack by hundreds of thousands of malicious hackers every year. And they're looking for a desktop that's really flexible and customizable and reliable, and that they can manage at a low cost. You can buy SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop for a year for $50 list price, and that includes the Office suite. At a price 1/10 that of the competitive operating system, we think SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop is a great deal. The key benefits of SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop for companies that are buying it today are mostly cost and security. Everybody knows that the mainstream desktop is very expensive to buy. You have to buy the desktop environment, you have to frequently buy new hardware for that desktop, and you have to buy an Office suite. With SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop at $50 a year, list price subscription, you get everything all together in one package. And desktops that people use these days are just riddled with security problems, from viruses to Trojans to buffer overflows in web browsers, all sorts of things like that cause major problems and bring down people's whole offices for days at a time sometimes. SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop, you don't have legions of malicious hackers trying to take down our systems, and we have a much better security system. So you have a secure desktop that's robust, that'll stand up to the networks and to the systems that are out there. Microsoft Vista's just come out, and out of habit, most companies are looking at adopting it. And it's an expensive upgrade. It's a whole new operating system. It requires new hardware. It's got a completely different user interface, and the new version of Microsoft Office has a totally different user interface. So changing is not a cheap or easy thing to do. And some companies are starting to wonder, why am I doing this for essentially the same functionality? Well, you can stay on that path if you want, or you can look at a Linux desktop. And we're asking CIOs to try a pilot of SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop to deploy 10 or 20% SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop units into their workforce. And once you've done that, let's say a few months pass, it's working, it's saving you money, you have a more secure desktop environment, and by the time Vista's at SP1 and you're looking to upgrade, suddenly you're in a completely different position. You have choice. You have leverage. We think you have a fiduciary responsibility to look at deploying an open desktop like SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop. Since its release, SUSE Linux Enterprise has been downloaded well over 1 million times, and we have hundreds of thousands of users of SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop out there today. Probably one of the biggest deployments is with the #2 auto manufacturer in Europe, PSA. They're deploying over 20,000 SUSE Linux Enterprise desktops, and they're not just for call center users or people on the factory floor. These are laptops that people are taking home with them. It's regular business users deploying this thing. We're very excited about that one. Across North America, hotels are adopting SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop for in-room computing and network use. Staybridge Suites is an early adopter, and they're deploying SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop. Another example are students in K-12 educational institutions like Windsor School District, who are deploying one SUSE Linux Enterprise Desktop computer for every student in the school.